I auditioned and I got the part of DJ and I also got the part of newsreader. So that was pretty amazing. And I just got to dip my toes into the radio world and I enjoyed every waking moment of it. We unpack everything from the social sides of raising children, financial side, psychological side, this massive, really huge task of raising a human being to be an upstanding citizen. I'm the voice of many, many brands. I've done the South African Music Awards on a few occasions, Miss South Africa. I've even done the MTV Mamas when they came to South Africa. I was the live voice for that. Everything we do is impactful. We don't do anything because we're doing it. There must be a lesson in every single thing we decide to do.
Hello, Africa. You're listening to 1000 African Voices. I'm your host, Aburengwi C, coming to you from our Johannesburg studios. 1000 African Voices is a program that profiles Africans of diverse cultures who have traveled and lived across the African continent and the world. In this series, we will collect and share stories from all parts of Africa. Welcome.
1000 African Voices.
Hello, African. Welcome to another episode of 1000 African Voices. Today, I am really glad to be introducing to the listeners of 1000 African Voices, Carol Ofori. Hi, Carol.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks, and you?
Oh, doing really well. Carol, maybe just right off the bat, can you introduce yourself to the listeners of 1000 African Voices? Who is Carol?
I would say that I'm just a fun, happy-go-lucky, sassy, friendly individual. So I think that's me in a nutshell.
Ah, great. And maybe to the listeners that are not familiar at all with your work, what is it that you do?
I am a radio personality, a TV personality, and I'm also a seasoned voiceover artist. But I also do pride myself in being an amazing wife and a great mom as well.
I'm sure your kids will be really glad to hear that. I'm always curious to understand how someone ends up maybe on radio or in television. Do you remember the first time you maybe decided that is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into radio, to be quite honest. I wanted to be a journalist. That's all I wanted to do. So at varsity, while studying for my journalism undergrad degree, I came across auditions for campus radio at RAW Radio those days, and now it's called UJFM. So I auditioned and I got the part of DJ and I also got the part of newsreader. So that was pretty amazing. And I just got to dip my toes into the radio world. And I enjoyed every waking moment of it.
Do you at times maybe wish you had pursued maybe being a pure journalist, or are you quite happy with how things turned out?
I think there are times where I wonder. I think the thing for me was I wonder if I had stuck with, hardcore journalism and that path, where would I be? And would I still be in South Africa? Would I be internationally based, covering international stories? Because I've always wanted to do things like that. But I'm very happy with the path that I'm on right now. I mean, I did practice as a journalist early on in my radio days and got to work for some really phenomenal, broadcasting companies. But I think I found it myself more rooted in the on-air broadcasting side of things as a presenter. But I do wonder that if I had gone and stuck with what I was doing, where would I have been today in the space of news?
And what was it about journalism that attracted you. So I want us to maybe focus on that first, then we'll move into the space that you are in now. But it's always interesting to understand what drove that passion or desire to be a journalist.
I fell in love with it, I would say, my grade 11 years. I mean, back then I was in standard 9, but to try and stay with the times, I was in grade 11 and approaching my matric year. And I knew that I had to decide what I wanted to be. My mind was kind of in everywhere. I wanted to be a game ranger. I wanted to be a policewoman. I wanted to be a lawyer. I was just everywhere. And then I saw a newspaper article that had an opportunity for a couple of students, grade 11s, to win an opportunity to go down to Rhodes University and learn about journalism. And all we had to do in order to qualify was to write an article about Steve Biko and what he meant to me. I don't even recall what I wrote in that article. But I won. I was one of the, I think, 10 winners nationwide that won the trip to go down to Rhodes University. And I got to meet Steve Biko's son. We got to go to his grave and we got to write an article about that experience. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I mean, I'm so happy that I had an opportunity to immerse myself in this career path before actually walking it so soon. Because by the time I matriculated, I knew I wanted to go to Rhodes. I knew I wanted to study journalism. Unfortunately, my marks were not that phenomenal for me to get into Rhodes, but I was able to get into the University of Johannesburg and pursue that dream of becoming a journalist. And I did see it through.
Maybe let's spend a bit of time on the journey that you've been on. So from the time when you were, I think you said Raw FM, which is now UJ FM.
Yeah.
Can we maybe take us through that journey, some of the milestones that you have achieved? But I'm really interested to understand how you got to where you are now so that at least our listeners can get a sense of how they can relate that to their own journey, desired or perhaps historical.
Sure. I mean, the whole thing was I was doing the campus radio, obviously during, campus hours. At the time, the radio station was only broadcasting into the student center. So literally we had our highest listenership when people were buying lunch. And then, of course, the lowest listenership when people were in classes. So that was our reach. And it was exciting to be able to, communicate to our peers. But what was the real learning curve was we then went and pursued the concept of, or rather the licensing of the station. So I was part of the team that pursued the licensing of the station, and we won the license. We won a local broadcasting license that would allow us to broadcast in a certain radius outside of just where we were, which was in this cafeteria area, to actually Auckland Park and the surrounding areas. So we won that license, but unfortunately, it only really got implemented because it takes years and stuff for that to happen. By the time I graduated, the year after I graduated, the license was in full effect. So that was a big milestone because I was part of the team that went to ICASA and pitched. I was part of the team that put together the document that won us that license. So that was a big, big achievement for me. And I just realized that, that's probably the foundation of my radio career as well.
Suppose it taught you a lot about not only being a voice, but to understand the industry. I would imagine that when you go through a license application process, you delve deeper into the industry and how it is set up and how it functions.
Absolutely.
So when you say, unfortunately, the license only came into effect once you had left, what I hear is that you were part of something that is now your legacy. As much as you were not there when the license became fully fledged, you can look back at that with pride. And I'm reminded of I was listening to a podcast in the morning, and they were talking about cathedrals that take centuries to build. So some take 300 years, where the bricklayers who put together the foundation die way before the cathedral is finished, but they know that in the process of building the cathedral, they are part of something big, even though they will never see the finished product. So I was sort of relating what you just said now to what I was listening to earlier.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Carol, the work that you're doing now, can you maybe just take us through some of the shows that you host, be it on the radio,
Yeah.
TV, as well as your voiceover work?
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm doing weekend breakfast on Radio 2000. So that's 6 to 9 a.m. Saturday and Sunday. The show is called The Weekend Favour because I'm very religious. I'm in love with Jesus and I just cannot operate outside of him. Everything that is a blessing to me, I want to attribute to his grace, his favor, his mercy. So that's why the show is called The Weekend Favour. Outside of that, I have a TV show called Raising Babies 101, which focuses on raising children between 0 and 5 years old. And that's on SABC 2. It's currently on repeat. We first shot the show in 2017. That was the first run. And we had a second rerun in 2018. And this year we're having our third rerun. And there's exciting news about prospects of a second season. So that's Raising Babies 101. I know there's repeats now, SABC 2, I think 3:30 on Saturdays. So a very enlightening show considering I'm a mom to now a 4-year-old. But when we shot the show, he was around 2. And very informative. You know, we sit down with experts. We unpack raising children between 0 and 5, as those are the most important years for children growing up. And we unpack everything from the social sides of raising children, financial side, psychological side, and just preparing parents and guardians to, this massive, really, really huge task of raising a human being to be an upstanding citizen. So that's also what I do. And then I'm also a seasoned voiceover artist, which is another part of me that I love so much. I'm the voice of many, many brands. And that also has just taught me how to use my voice to make an income. But outside of that, just, be creative with my voice, having voiced so many brands and being a part of so many things. So like I've done the South African Music Awards on a few occasions, Miss South Africa on a few occasions. I've even done the MTV Mamas when they came to South Africa. I was the live voice for that. So those are the big standout ones from a live TV perspective, but done many shows that I voiced, currently doing voice for a major cell phone network in South Africa, also for 2 major radio stations. I'm the voice of 2 major radio stations in the country and a lot of retail stores. I don't like mentioning the names by brands because I feel like the anonymity of voiceover artists makes it exciting. It's always so alluring when somebody says, "Are you the voice of such and such brand? I'm sure I know it's you." And then I feel like, "Oh, I've been bussed. I'll just, smile or whatever it is." So it's quite exciting to do that and, be able to. And that's why I love what I do. I can do all these voices and people won't know. They only pick up when I talk. Someone will say, "Wait a moment, aren't you on the radio? Wait a moment, didn't you do this TV ad? Wait a moment, I'm sure I've heard your voice before." And you can see them really puzzling, trying to figure out how do they know this voice. So I enjoy that. With Raising Babies, of course, you see me on the television, but that's a new baby. I mean, I've been in radio almost 20 years now and in voiceovers almost 20 years. So TV is a new baby for me. I've been enjoying just being that voice that people go, "I know your voice from somewhere."
No, I mean, you're right in saying that part of the mystery really helps the brand. So when I think of Carol Ofori, I would imagine that when I only recognize the voice and not the face, not knowing the face helps the brand. And I'm thinking within the South African context, there's one of the TV stations, ETV. They've been around for probably over 20 years, and there's always been this voice of a guy who announces what's on the next day, and people never really know who the gentleman is, but it's alluring to recognize that voice.
100%.
So yeah, I totally can relate to that.
Yeah.
I'm always curious to understand the process that a radio host specifically goes through when you're preparing to have a show, as well as during the show. What are some of the challenges that you have to deal with as you prepare for a show? And later we can then talk about some of the challenges that you face being a live voice on the radio.
Yeah, I think what makes great radio is great preparation. So we start working towards our show. I say we because I work with a producer who is phenomenal. She's really hardworking and creative. And together we kind of map out, what we want to achieve and how we're going to achieve it. So by Monday, Tuesday, we start chatting about the week ahead of us. Although because August has been Women's Month, we had kind of mapped out the intentions of interviews of the people we'd like to interview considering Women's Month. So we did focus mainly on women and women of interest and women who've done phenomenal things. So it was easier this month because we had a theme and we kind of went with it. But we planned for our weekend show already for Monday, Tuesday, we're chatting. Wednesday, we kind of finalizing where we're going. Thursday, we're putting down the documents, as in where we're going, the full documents, the scripts. When I say scripts, it's not like I take a piece of paper and read it verbatim, but basically a guideline of what duration of time do I have on what segment, because it is quite a busy show. By Thursday, the show is ready to go. So if my boss called and said, listen, Friday morning, I need you to host that show, we can do it Friday morning. It's ready to go. So Saturday, we come in a good half an hour to an hour prior to the show, just basically unpacking the show and what's coming up on the show. And then 6 a.m. Saturday morning, we are live. And by the time we are live, we are fully prepared for what we have ahead of us, and also prepared for if guests don't pitch. People kind of only hear what happens between 6 and 9 a.m., but there's a lot that goes on before we get to 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning or 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. So a lot of preparation goes into it. And then, of course, the on-air element of it is once you've got your script ready and know where you're going with every link, then it's easier to execute it flawlessly because you are clear on what you're trying to get out of every segment that you do. So it's not just switching on a mic and just talking without, a beginning or an end.
And part of the attraction to the entertainment world, and I'll continue to focus on the radio, part of the attraction is as a listener, I'll hear Carol on a Saturday morning at 6 and around 9 o'clock you're done. So I think to myself, gee, this is such a lovely job. So all I have to do is to sit down, talk for 3 hours and get paid. How you've described it now, you've really made it sound less attractive. It sounds like there's a lot more work that goes into preparing for a show. So it's not simply a matter of working for 3 hours and off you go. We'll see you in 7 days' time.
Right. I mean, we just have a weekend show. So that's 2 shows of a week. And we're prepping it from Monday. And when I say prepping it, I'm not talking about just taking cuts, copy and paste. We strategically think about who we're talking to and will this really impact them at all? So everything we do is impactful. We don't do anything because we're doing it. There must be a lesson in every single thing we decide to do. So, there's a lot of thought. Sometimes my producer and I may not agree on topics to discuss. And sometimes we're seeing eye to eye and are literally just reading each other's minds. But yeah, it's a team effort. And there's a lot of hard work that goes in behind the scenes. And yeah, people think it's a 6 to 9. Literally, I walk in at 5 to 6 in the morning and switch on a mic and wah, 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 I switch it off. And then 9 o'clock, I'm done. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of research that my producer does, a lot of reading that I have to do after all her research. And then, then it's the confidence to deliver the product in a way that, makes sense and is intriguing.
I mean, I'm keen now to explore what you've just said when it says the confidence that you need the confidence to deliver the product. So I wanted to sort of get into the mind of a radio host. When you say confidence to deliver the product, I know it sounds obvious, but I'm really interested to understand how you interpret that. So when you say confidence to deliver a product, what does that mean for you?
Well, it means, you gain confidence because you know what you're talking about. So the preparation makes you confident because you know exactly what you're talking about. So for example, it's Women's Month. If we're going to talk about women empowerment and the statistics around women who have been empowered and how they've come to that place, being well read up on the topic and well informed on the topic helps you as a presenter to deliver that information confidently. Because you must remember that your listeners only believe what you say because you believe what you say. It's very easy in radio to hear if a presenter doesn't know what they're talking about, because radio is literally what you hear. So people listen quite attentively. So if I stutter or stumble over something or reread something 3 times because I had a typo and I actually didn't read my script well enough or read the line well enough, it comes across quite loudly to your audience. Whereas on television, because you're physically on the TV, people look at your actions and can tell by your body language that you are uncomfortable and not versed in what you're talking about. Whereas with the radio side, your voice gives everything away because you'll tremble, and your regular listeners know you and will know your voice when you are assertive and in control of what you're talking about. And they'll pick up when you're not. So the confidence comes from being able to see your script, and I use the word script loosely. We only call it a script because it's a piece of paper with direction on where we're going. But it's by no means something we read verbatim like we, in a soap opera where the lines are the lines and you have to stick to them. It's a mere guideline as to where you're going with the conversation to not throw you off. So that also comes into play. And also remember that I do music radio, so we have time limits. I cannot talk for longer than 3, 4, 5 minutes at a go, because in music radio you got to keep it short and choppy and play more music, right? So those are all the challenges you have. So if you're sitting there with an interview with a person who you ask them, how are you? And they spend 3 minutes telling you how their cat and their dog and they is doing, that is like the worst thing for a music radio presenter. Because there goes your 3, 4 minutes, and then you got to go to a song, and before you know it, the hour is up. Whereas when you get, a person who you ask them how they're doing and they say, great, thanks, and you're able to get into the meat of the conversation, then you are able to do it well. So this is all the confidence I'm talking about, is if someone is going to be telling you about the cats and the dogs and the mice, that you can jump in and say, okay, that's great, but what I really want to find out from you is, with your new book, tell us more about why you decided to have this title, or whatever the case may be. So to always be in control of your show is also part of the confidence. Sometimes you get overwhelming guests who will try and, out-talk, and not with malice, just, a very eager, excited person. And you have to kind of take control of that. But then sometimes there are very powerful, influential people who are saying really amazing things, but it's been 10 minutes of them saying these amazing things, and you have to just find the tact to kind of, cut the conversation. So yeah, that's the confidence I'm referring to.
No, thank you for that. The more you speak, the more appreciative I am becoming of sort of a show like 1,000 African Voices, where we literally have all the time to explore whatever topic we want to get into. Whereas when you're competing with music, I suppose it's really difficult, I would imagine, to always be anticipating the next song and to be thinking about what you're going to talk about for the next 3 to 5 minutes. But I'm sure with 20 years of experience in the industry, I would like to believe that you now are so well versed in the techniques and skills that are required to make for a successful show.
Right.
I'm wondering, Carol, I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of influential people in your time. Who are maybe some of the people that you have interviewed that have left a long-lasting impact on you and your worldview? Who are some of the most memorable people that you've had?
It's funny you asked that because, from my reporting days to, where I am today and having my career spanning so many years, off the top of my head, it's so hard to just pick of one person or a few people for that matter, because there's just been so many incredible people that, I've had conversations with and just learned from. I'll give you one example. We had a conversation not so long ago, and I think what will probably be freshest in my memory is the ones that have been recent, right? So I sat down with the actor Silo Makenube, And he's from, popular soapy star, popular, playwright, and also done quite a few stage productions. And we were talking about fatherhood. It was during the month of June, and the role of fathers, and how do you raise men, because the conversations are complex. And he just made one statement that really sat with me. He said, his son would be problematic at times, and he would just turn to his son and say, "I wish you have a son or a child that is just like you." And I thought, I don't want a child that's just like me. I was a real problem growing up. I was too explorative and all that. So that was really interesting how his perception of parenting was, considering the space that I'm in as a mom and raising a child. That's something that will probably, maybe a 3-year-old won't get it, but I think if you say those words to a 16 or 17-year-old, they might resonate a lot better in the idea of, keep it up. And, the possibility of you having a kid just like you is real. So that was very, very profound, very simple, but in the context to me, it was quite profound. And then just having conversations. We have a segment on my show called The Round Table. And we unpack a lot of, social situations that, we face in South Africa. And some of the conversations that come out of that always leave me always having learned something. Like last week, we spoke about women and why they stay in abusive relationships, even if the abuser is just horrible. And there was a lady there, Jackie Chauke from ADAPT. It's an NGO that helps women in that predicament, who told the story of her own reasons for being there. And she said, if you are encountering a woman who is being abused and is in an abusive relationship, the last thing she wants to hear from you is, why are you still there? And she put it in context that women in that position, once you ask them that question, you kind of put the responsibility and the onus all solely on their shoulders. And it becomes more of an accusation than a question in their eyes, because in that moment, they're looking for safety, for peace of mind. And when you ask that question, it's like a somewhat aggressive question. And who would have thought, that asking someone in that predicament, why are you still there, is actually putting their back up against the wall and making them feel like you're judging them. So that was completely profound for me. Like I say, considering the month of August, it was completely profound, because I think that's the first question anyone would ask a woman who you can see she's visibly got a blue eye, she's in a horrible relationship. I mean, anyone would ask that question. But now I exercise caution with that type of language, because now I know how it's being perceived by the abused. So I think those two, off the top of my head, would definitely be ones that just open my mind up to different people's lives,
Yeah. I mean, just to point out, maybe more for myself, the one thing that stands out with your responses is that the answer you giving, even though I asked for who are some of the people that you've spoken to, your responses for me are more on what was said and less on who said what was said, if that makes any sense. That's such a deep thing in my mind that it doesn't actually really matter who you're talking to. What matters is the message that's being delivered and the conversations that's being had, regardless of who that person is. That's such a powerful thing. I felt I needed to point that out. There are people who turn on your show to get information, to be educated, etc., but it means you are in that process the educator or the provider of information.
Right.
Who or what do you listen to get the information that you need to be able to do your job well? I mean, what are some of the sources of information that you access so that you can be not only a well-rounded Carol Ofori, but that you can empower your listeners so that when they turn on, they know that the information they're getting from you is not only valid, but it's accurate as well. In a roundabout way, I'm asking about maybe the radio shows that you listen to, books that you read, maybe TV programming that you follow. just to share sort of the world of Carol and what informs your views?
I think for me, what I'm most enthused by is self introspection. I really love the ability to look myself in the mirror and be okay with decisions that I make and be okay with life choices that I make. And because of that, a lot of what I read and what I expose myself to is in that space. So, for example, I love listening to Oprah's Super Soul Sunday Conversations, her podcasts, which are literally conversations about the soul, deeply spiritual conversations about your relationship with God and Christ and where you fit in the whole picture of life. And I think, when that's at the core of me, my operation, everything else kind of is easier to, break down or understand. I think once you holistically understand yourself and have an appreciation for your flaws as well as your strengths, you are able to give the best of yourself. So the more I learn about how to better myself, I feel the more I learn how to better myself in my job, my career, my life as a mom, my life as a wife, and the conversations that I hear there are very profound. I also love Ianla Van Zandt. She definitely, I would say, is the queen of self-introspection. She's a big advocate for knowing yourself, for looking yourself in the mirror and acknowledging who you are with your flaws, accepting what people say are your flaws and, looking into that. So I think, bringing it back to broadcasting, I cannot do this without feedback. I love feedback. I love people telling me I'm doing something bad just as much as I love people telling me I'm doing something good. And I can only take that feedback when I know that's who I am and I know where I can work on myself. So when I get feedback, I know that it's an opportunity to do better. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I do find that for me, listening to podcasts that help with self introspection and self growth have helped me do better in this broadcasting space where I'm at now.
No, you have answered the question, because the question really is, what is it that you rely on? The common phrase, who polices the police type situation, where they're there to protect us, but who's looking after them?
Right.
In a simplistic way, that's really what I'm asking, that you helping us with info, but who's helping you?
Right.
So it's actually good that you then make reference to Oprah and how the podcasts that you have access to then influence you. So I actually really like the idea of self-introspection. That's such a powerful thing. And as times move on, like in 2019, as we now have less time than previously, you find that time with yourself then takes on a more significant role in your life. And those that do that well are always, in my mind, they always have an advantage over the rest of us who are always in this tailspin. So just taking a moment out and saying, can I look back at some of the choices that I've been making and how those impact my next moment? So yeah, that is quite powerful.
Right.
All right. I'm quite aware that I can go on for some time, but I'm also aware that I need to be respectful of your time. Perhaps before you go, Carol, those who want to have access to your content, and really I'm asking about the programs, the shows that you have, where can people hear your voice currently? And on social media as well, how can we follow you?
Sure. On social media, it's at Carol Ofori on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And then I also have my website, carolofori.com. I tend to blog there every now and again. So, you can check out on the blogs. And then I'm on Radio 2000 every Saturday and Sunday. That's nationwide in South Africa. I think we also stream via the SABC app, and that's Radio 2000 Saturday and Sunday between 6 and 9 a.m. And then the voiceovers, I guess you'll just hear me when you hear me.
Yes, we'll definitely be on the lookout. I actually felt privileged that for 40 minutes, I got to be on this side of the conversation. when on voiceovers, I'm sure we get, I don't know how long voiceovers are, a minute, 3 minutes. So to listen to you for 40 minutes has been an absolute privilege. So I'm grateful that you made the time to lend your voice to the 1000 African Voices project, where we attempt to erase the boundaries that have been artificially put in place to divide our beautiful continent. So I am grateful that you've given us the last 40 minutes. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm just, I'm praying for the day as Africans we can see the beauty, the power, the resilience, the uniqueness, the just unbelievableness that we are as African people, from the top of this continent to the bottom of it. And I just can't wait for the day we can see each other as brothers and sisters and love each other and unite financially, unite as a continent. And then the world will be a real interesting place, because I feel a lot of things have been done to this continent to make sure we never, ever have a merger of minds, a merger of culture, and a merger of financial and resources. And I think there's obviously a bigger reason for why that hasn't happened. I think as a continent, we are extremely powerful, and the world knows it. And I just wish as Africans, we will find a time in my lifetime, I pray, that we will see the power we have as Africans, because not only are we beautiful people, I mean, from South Africa all the way to Nigeria and beyond to Egypt and beyond, we are just such beautiful people inside out. And I can understand how humankind first started here, because we're just great. So I pray for that day. I really do. And I'm passionate and love this continent with everything in me.
What a beautiful way to end this conversation. Yeah, I really couldn't have said that better. It really is what 1000 African Voices is about. That day when we stop waiting for external validation, but you look at yourself, you look at your brother, and you say, hey, I am enough, and enough is enough. I am going to take full control of my life and make a difference in this world. So yeah, Carol, thank you for those words, and hopefully our listeners will listen to that and take it to heart, so that we can collectively move our continent forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this. It was great fun.
Thank you, and take care.
All right, have a good night.
1000 African Voices.
You've been listening to 1000 African Voices. Please join us next time as we bring you yet another African voice. 1000 African Voices is produced by Aburengwi C. Sam Ganich is our sound engineer, with our head researcher Jones Maleka. The intro soundtrack for the show is by the legendary Salif Gator from his 1995 album Forlorn. The song you're listening to right now is by Chronix, and the title of the song is Legend. For more information, including the contact details of our guests, please visit us on our website www.1000africanvoices.com. You can also subscribe to our show on iTunes by searching for 1000 African Voices. We are also available on Stitcher. You can find us as well on Podbean. The only thing we ask of you is that you subscribe to our show by logging on to 1000africanvoices.com and click the subscribe button. That helps us grow. It helps us keep producing and bringing to you more African voices. Until next time, Kungana Africa, and take care.
Being an ordinary person doing what's right. Yesterday at the football game, a little girl asked me my name. She said, sir, I've seen you before, tell me who are you? I said, I am a legend that you never heard of before. I said, I am a lion, but you never heard me roar. I am a hero that nobody celebrates. But if one person remembers my name, that means on the ocean of fame, I'm an unknown sailor. I'm the percussionist playing with the wailers, the one with the shaker, the mover and shaker. My name wasn't on the front of the paper, but me not cater. Much more than the work is greater. Creation glorifies creator. So all deeds done are in the name of my maker. I am a legend that you probably never hear about. Words from the lion's mouth. I am a hero that nobody celebrates. But if one person remembers my name, give praise, that means I made a change. Story of my life, ordinary person just like you. If you take a look inside, you see the great things that people do. We're out here changing lives day and night, day in, day out. BBC don't show you, CNN don't show